The following program contains scenes that some viewers may find disturbing.
Todd, he loved it here. He liked the atmosphere in Lewisburg because it was just low-key. He trusted everyone. I used to tell him that all the time, and he would laugh at me and he'd say, "Oh, Mom, you worry too much. Nothing's going to happen." But it did. I know that the good Lord knows how evil they are, and they'll pay their dues.
Individual identified himself as Harry Johnson. He said he was an employee for TMAC Security. He told me that they had received a call at their office from Todd McQuaid, who was the owner of the company. Todd said, "I've been shot. I'm on a mountain behind Meadow Bridge."
Hang on now. He needs assistance. He's been shot at Meadow Bridge.
So I started asking Mr. Johnson some more specific questions, and he didn't really seem to have the answers.
Really?
We have to act upon the information we've received. Vague as it is, Todd McQuaid has been shot, and he's on a mountain behind Meadow Bridge.
Meadow Bridge is a desolate forest 30 miles outside of town. For Trooper Bruce Sloan, finding a wounded and possibly unconscious man out there in the dark will take a miracle.
There's a large area to cover in terms of sparsely populated mountainous terrain.
Trooper Sloan called me to assist him in trying to locate Todd McQuaid.
I was acquainted with Todd McQuaid, as was Tom Johnson, the other trooper assigned to it. So we knew Todd.
In fact, almost everyone in town knows Todd McQuaid. He's a 35-year-old businessman with 2 young daughters.
He had a successful security guard company, TMAC Incorporated, and he was very well known in the community.
We coordinated ground searches to see if we could find anything.
And we had the fire departments over there look for anything out of the ordinary. We were on the hunt to see if we could locate him, his vehicle, his gun, his identification, money, wallet, or anything.
Todd may be dying somewhere in the woods, but police can't find him or anything that looks suspicious. So after nearly 5 hours, Sloan calls the search off for the night.
Sergeant Sloan called. It was 3:30 in the morning. He said it was too dark to search. I just didn't know what to think. Todd would never do that, to just go off and leave his company. I just wanted to know where he was. If he was having a problem, he would have called home. Why isn't he calling home?
Early the next morning, the search for Todd is on again. Officers Sloan and Johnson visit Todd's office to see if anyone there knows anything that could help find him.
When we arrived at the office, the individual who I'd spoken with, Harry Johnson, was there, introduced himself.
Harry Joe Johnson was a new employee of TMAC. He had been in the military. He provided guard service and assisted Todd in installing alarm systems.
Harry Johnson said that his last conversation with Mr. McQuaid was October 13th. Tammy Wilson was the operations manager for the company. Ms. Wilson told me that she was the one that actually received the call on October 15th. She reiterated what Harry Johnson had said. Todd had called in and said, "I've been shot. I'm on a mountain behind Meadow Bridge." In 1990, we didn't have the cellular telephone capabilities we have today. So my question to her was, what did he call in on? Her response was the portable radio, which struck me as odd at the time. Because of the terrain, communications between two-way radios would be limited.
Tammy Wilson tells the troopers Todd went to Meadowbridge to deliver an arrest warrant to his ex-girlfriend, Edie Grimes.
They had a lot of problems in the past, and it culminated in a breakup.
Ms. Wilson told me Edie Grimes had broken into his office and stole some property.
There was a felony burglary warrant for her that had not been served.
Mr. McQuaid was upset because the sheriff's department had not executed the arrest warrant, and he was going to personally go find Miss Grimes. Miss Wilson said that Mr. McQuaid had left on October 10th trying to locate Miss Grimes. She said that he would call in every morning, and he had reported to her that he had not located Miss Grimes, but he thought he was getting close.
Tammy tells the officers she fears Todd finally found Edie and something terrible happened.
Our first course of action was to locate Edie Grimes, since all of this seemed to center around her.
We was on the hunt of her at that point as a suspect.
Sloan and Johnson speed to Meadow Bridge to find Edie. If they can find her, maybe they can find Todd. As volunteers search the mountain outside Meadow Bridge, troopers Sloan and Johnson check out one of Edie's favorite watering holes.
They come into the bar, and they asked the bartender, who I was, which one I was, if I was in there. Of course, she pointed me out.
She claims she hasn't seen Todd in weeks.
She told us she had no idea at all where he may be, what had happened to him. She certainly expressed no involvement in anything to do with Mr. McQuaid.
Do I need a lawyer? They said, no, man, we're just talking. I said, yeah, I think I need a lawyer.
That ends the friendly conversation. The troopers slap on the cuffs and arrest her on the outstanding warrant.
We get in the car, and he starts asking me, when's the last time you seen him? How were things between you the last time you talked to him, and stuff like that. And I looked over at him, I said, somebody kill him? He looked at me and said, why don't you tell me that, Edie?
We did want to try to verify if she did harbor some ill will or some reason to do him harm.
And me and Todd had a rocky relationship, we did.
Hey, are you crazy?
Todd struck me different from anybody else I'd ever met. I was crazy about that man. Todd was probably the love of my life. Todd was a very good-looking man. When he wanted something, he went after it, and he got it. That's just the way he was.
The problem for Edie is that she's not the only one he wanted.
Todd just had his women. That I never quit straying. I left him simply because of that. I've got a jealous streak a mile wide, and it just don't work. But with Todd, he didn't walk away.
Edie left, but Todd wouldn't let her go. Things got ugly.
And I'm the type of person, lay your hands on me, the consequences are going to be there, whether it's the law or whatever.
To the cops, it sure doesn't look like Edie's hiding from Todd.
Todd was looking for her. She was easy to find because she had been at the same place, at the same house since she had left him.
That's another thing that seemed odd to us, that we were readily able to locate her in a short period of time, but yet Mr. McQuaid had been gone for several days and had not located her.
If anyone could have found Edie, it was Todd. So what's he been doing for the past 5 days?
He always had his eyes on me. He always knew where I was. Todd, for months after we broke up, he would come to where I was working. He'd never come in. He'd just sit outside and watch me. He just letting me know that he still had his eye on me. He's still watching me. Todd was strange. He was a strange cookie.
24 hours after his frantic call for help, there's still no trace of Todd McQuaid. Was Todd serving a warrant? Or did his tangled love life finally get him in trouble?
And I'll tell you straight up, the day I left Todd, my last words to that man were, "You can't keep doing women the way you do women, Todd." I said, 'cause one of these days, one of them's gonna put a bullet in your head.
Lewisburg, West Virginia. The town saw its share of bloodshed during the Civil War. Now it's a peaceful place. It's been proclaimed America's coolest small town.
Lewisburg, West Virginia. Small town USA. Population 3,000, 3,500. You could walk down the street of Lewisburg and know everyone that you met.
Lewisburg is probably one of the safest counties in the state, the lowest crime rate in the nation.
Good place for children to grow up. Good place to live.
As word spreads that local businessman Todd McQuaid is missing, friends and neighbors are left guessing about his mysterious disappearance.
We moved to Lewisburg because we liked the simplicity of West Virginia and thought it would be a great place to start a family.
Todd also thought it was a good place to start up his security business.
He was the oldest in his generation in our family. Anytime somebody around him was in need, he was the go-to person. He was the one that always was there for everybody.
Todd was successful because he developed a reputation that he provided good service and he presented himself well, and he did a good job.
The business grew, but his marriage failed, leaving his wife and 2 daughters to move back to New Jersey. Left behind, Todd throws himself into his work.
You had to like him. He was a great guy. He was always trying to help people.
He hires locals to work as security guards. Some are ex-military, like Harry Joe Johnson, and business manager Tammy Wilson.
Todd would tend to hire people that maybe had difficulty getting jobs elsewhere.
Like Roger Klein, not smart enough for security work, but good as a handyman.
Todd really tried to make the world a better place.
Business is not the only area where Todd finds success in Lewisburg. He's getting to know the town's women, one by one.
A number of women came up to me because they knew I was his friend and, asked me to set them up with him. He was apparently gorgeous, at least that's what I'm told.
He's single, successful, and a hit with the ladies. But now Todd's gone. It's been 24 hours since he was reportedly shot, delivering an arrest warrant to his ex-girlfriend. Todd's office manager suspects that woman, Edie Grimes, pulled the trigger and left him to die.
We first heard that Todd was missing when Tammy called and said he had been shot. Tammy said Edie was some crazy lady and that she was a drug addict and that more than likely she or her West Virginia hillbilly brothers had killed him. I thought that he was dead. It was just a matter of finding him.
Edie Grimes is under arrest for breaking and entering at Todd McQuaid's home office. Edie admits she went there, but it was to get something she didn't want anyone else to know about.
When I broke up with Todd, he was in possession of a tape that I didn't want him to have.
So what's on the tape? Edie, and it isn't in a way she wants to be remembered.
I was cleaning one day. I said, okay, it's a VHS. And I put it in. I said, sat there for a few minutes and oh my God! When did he do that? Todd would tape our lovemaking. I, at the time, did not know that tape was being made. That camera was hidden. That's why it upset me when I found it and I took it. Of course, I questioned him about it and all. He wanted the tape back. Oh, he got angry. He wanted that tape back.
Edie's angry too, and hell-bent on getting that tape to destroy it.
I never broke into his house, period, ever, in the entire time I ever knew him. I had a key.
The troopers now see Todd is living a dangerous double life.
There was two different sides of Todd. He was a security man, and that's the way people around here looked at him. But that all fell within the realms of the kinky. Porno. Self-film porno. He couldn't let nobody know he was like that. Not in this small town. You gain a reputation like that, and people around here will dog you until you're gone.
There's no doubt that Edie is angry with Todd McQuaid. But are secret sex tapes motive enough to shoot him? Witnesses say she was in the bar that night. She can't have been on a mountain shooting Todd. With no other suspects, no crime scene, and no Todd, police are back to square one.
We were using a shotgun blast of technique, interviewing everyone we could possibly interview.
Maybe someone had noticed something odd, or maybe Mr. McQuaid had made a comment to them that they thought was unusual.
Police find that although Todd is well known, a lot of his day-to-day activities are a mystery, even to his best friends.
He always seemed to be doing some interesting things, and he did some work as a private investigator as well as the security business stuff, but I didn't know most of it. I don't think anybody really knew all of it except Todd.
You never knew what he was into with these surveillances and things like that. He always gave you the impression that it was a dangerous something he was doing.
So what happened to him? Troopers Sloan and Johnson get the feeling they're being played.
It was frustrating. We couldn't find anyone that had any information that would help us. It appeared we were going on wild goose chases. The only information we had was what was provided to us by Tammy Wilson. So we start questioning, are we getting accurate information from Miss Wilson?
We just felt there was something more to the story than what was being told.
Tammy Wilson's recent history fills in some of the blanks.
She had been married several times. She had kids.
Tammy applied for a job with Todd as a security guard. And he took her on. I mean, she's fresh out of the Army. She had all the credentials. Plus, she was dark-haired, dark-eyed beauty. Everything Todd needed right there. Deal.
Within weeks of hiring Tammy, Todd is sleeping with her, and Edie is not happy about it.
Well, I kind of told her she was stupid. Right out here on the street in front of the house. Because he was trying to tell me that he wasn't having anything to do with her. And I found out different. Yeah, she pretty much got an earful that day. So did the whole Lewisburg.
What Edie didn't know that day is Tammy and Todd were making some very big plans together.
A few weeks before he was reported as gone, Todd and Tammy came to my office on some business. I think that was the last time I saw him.
Tammy Wilson had the signature authority on Todd's two businesses. Jim Gurl, a local attorney, was in the process of developing a third company for them, which she and he were to own together.
Tammy seemed like a nice person to me. Todd seemed to really like her.
Within 2 months of their first meeting, Todd and Tammy have become lovers, and now business partners.
I was jealous of the fact that she seemed like nice and that maybe he finally found somebody who was going to help him get his life together.
Is Tammy trying to help Todd, or is she trying to help herself to his money? The troopers want to hear Tammy's side of the story.
I told her that myself and Trooper Johnson did not believe that Todd McQuaid had been shot in the Meadow Bridge area. And we felt like there was another explanation for what had happened in his disappearance. So, in an effort to confirm her story, I asked her if she'd be willing to submit to a polygraph examination. And she said that she would.
The lie detector test is booked for the following week. It looks like police are closing in on Tammy Wilson. Then, out of the blue, Sloan gets a phone call that sends the case spinning in a whole new direction. Someone wants to confess to shooting Todd McQuaid and agrees to lead police to the body. Lewisburg, West Virginia. It's been 8 days since Todd McQuaid was reported missing by employees at his security company. Until now, 2 women have been the main suspects. Todd's ex-girlfriend, Edie Grimes, and his current girlfriend, Tammy Wilson.
Actually, I spoke to Tammy on the phone because I called her and asked her, what'd you do to him? And then she, back at me, would you tell me what you did with him? Please, Edie, tell us what you did with his body. I said, girl, if anything's done with his body, you did it with it, not me. And that's when it really hit me. That girl was trying to set me up for killing Todd. And I wasn't so sure she wasn't going to get it done. Or making it look like I'd paid somebody or something like that. That I had a hand in it. Yeah, it scared me. It really did. Because I didn't know what she was masterminding there. I mean, if you're cold-blooded enough and serious enough to go ahead and take a person's life, it's hard to tell what she had in mind for you.
But now a killer has surfaced, and it's not someone the police ever suspected.
The dispatcher told me that she had received a telephone call from a Roger Klein, who was wanting to come to the state police office and confess to shooting Todd McQuaid.
Todd McQuaid's slow-witted employee, Roger Klein, turns himself in.
Well, I was scared. I did it.
And he knows something only the killer could know.
Roger became remorseful, and so he came forward to the police. And he then told them where the body was.
Following his directions, police find Todd McQuaid's body 260 miles away in Ohio.
His body was found in Belmont County, Ohio, in a secluded, wooded area.
In a deep ravine off of a road. He was wrapped in a quilt, plastic garbage bags, and a tarpaulin, and buried in a shallow grave.
I have to admit, I was surprised. We had spoken with Roger Klein simply because he was an employee of TMAC. I had not associated him with being someone that could have been responsible for a shooting.
Roger Klein didn't have the intelligence to be a security guard, so Todd hired him as a handyman.
Todd felt sorry for him and gave him a job.
I think Roger Klein had came to the point that he could no longer live with his self, knowing that he'd killed someone and that he had to get it off his chest.
The question is, why did he do it?
His story is that after his shift of work, that Mr. McQuaid wanted him to go for a ride with him to discuss his work performance. McQuaid started to confront him and was coming down on him pretty hard. Mr. Klein gets scared. He jumps out of the vehicle and runs. And Mr. McQuaid chases him. They have an encounter. He's able to get the firearm from Mr. McQuaid that he was wearing at the time. accidentally discharges and strikes Mr. McQuaid in the back of the head.
Afraid he'll go to jail for murder, Roger panics and dumps the body.
Roger loaded his body, the company Bronco, and transported him to Ohio and dumped him over a hill there.
Sergeant Sloan called and said they found Todd. And I just froze. And then I just said, "Is he alive?" And he said, "No."
It was almost a relief, in a sense, when they found his body, that it was over. I had a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and I had to tell them that their dad was dead.
To lose a family member is hard enough, but to have them taken from you, there's just no words to describe the pain.
Now it's up to the medical examiner to figure out how Todd died.
The body was decomposed quite significantly.
Dental records is what was used to identify the body. There were diagrams and photographs taken at the scene in Belmont County.
I've seen a lot of homicide pictures that are gross. These were something that are memorable, and you just as soon forget.
He shot in the head with a .40 caliber pistol one time.
Todd has been shot straight on from more than 3 feet away. This doesn't fit Roger's story, that the shooting was an accident during a struggle.
It was not accidental. It was an execution.
Roger Klein may have confessed, but troopers Johnson and Sloan believe he's lying.
There's a lot of this story that just doesn't quite add up.
It fit that we found the body where he said we was going to find it, and that he was involved for the murder. I mean, there's some things that fit, but there's lots of other things that didn't fit.
We actually went to the area where Mr. Klein indicated this shooting occurred. It's called River Road. There was no evidence of a struggle, no evidence of any discharge of a weapon, no blood or anything.
You have to be fairly clever to be a convincing liar. Roger Klein's intelligence was not sufficient nature that he could string the original story together to make it credible. The problem is Klein's story just didn't hold water.
The examination of Todd's body shows Roger Klein isn't the only one lying.
The decomposing tells us that it was a couple weeks between the actual murder and the discovery of the body. The murder occurred on or around October the 6th. So we started developing lots of inconsistencies as to how long Todd's been dead.
If Mr. McQuaid was dead on October 6th, he obviously did not make a phone call on October 15th. So now our next course of action is to determine why were we provided false information up to this point.
Harry Joe Johnson and Tammy Wilson's story about Todd's desperate phone call from Meadow Bridge can't be true.
We suspected they were involved, but now we had to prove it because Roger Klein was willing to take the rap for the whole thing.
The killing of Mr. Todd McQuaid.
Troopers Sloan and Johnson pick their next target carefully.
We're discussing what our next step should be, and we felt like Harry Johnson was probably the weak link.
Harry Joe Johnson was ex-Army. He was a family man, had a kid. He was the one with the most to lose. So I felt like he was going to be the one that opened the door for us.
So they find Harry Joe Johnson, hoping to coax him into telling what he knows.
He was doing a security shift at Mulligan Lumber Company in Ronsford.
Tough guy Harry doesn't break. He admits nothing.
We discussed all the options and how he had come to a crossroads. If he was involved in a crime, and he continued to deceive us that it would go against him when things came out.
Seeing no way out, Harry admits he and Roger Klein were both involved in the murder, but he doesn't stop there. He reveals that Todd McQuaid wasn't killed in the forest, but late at night on October 6th in the home of Tammy Wilson. Lewisburg, West Virginia. Business owner and father of two, Todd McQuaid, has been found dead in Ohio, killed with a .40 caliber shot to the back of his head. Two of his employees have confessed to the murder, and police are closing in on a third. But then, the already confusing case takes another bizarre turn.
When we finish the interview with Harry Johnson, he receives radio transmission from Tammy Wilson.
Harry, this is T1, where are you?
Harry, over. She asked him, have you had any visitors tonight?
Sure did.
And he responded, yes, I have. And she said, give me a call in about 25 minutes.
Instead of a call, Tammy gets a visit from the police.
We proceeded to the TMAC office to locate Tammy Wilson and arrest her. She's shocked and appalled that we think she has some involvement with this murder. So we transport her back to the Lewisburg State Police Office for processing.
The case has come full circle. The first people to report Todd's disappearance are now in custody.
I couldn't believe it involved his own employees, people that he hired and was good to. Todd was good to he was good to them.
We started taking statements from him, and we obviously wanted to get them separated.
Two very different pictures emerge of what happened the night Todd McQuaid was murdered.
Harry tells us this all occurred as a plan concocted by Tammy Wilson. Tammy asked him if he could be a participant in a perfect crime, would he do it?
In Harry's story, Tammy has a reward for each of them. To Harry, she offers part ownership in the new security company.
Harry Johnson was having some financial troubles, so he's interested.
And to Roger, she offers herself, leading him to believe a romance is possible.
So they all agreed to be a part of this crime.
Harry's job is to be the cleanup man, while Roger is to do the killing.
Harry Johnson, he tells us the plan was for Tammy to get Mr. McQuaid incapacitated by drugs. And then Roger and Harry was to come to her house and they would do the execution.
According to Harry, Tammy opens the door wearing lingerie. Todd's been drugged and is passed out upstairs.
Roger Klein shoots at Mr. McQuaid 3 different times. All 3 rounds miss. Mr. McQuaid is so out of it, he never responds. On the 4th try, he shoots Mr. McQuaid in the head and kills him.
Tammy Wilson's version is a very different account of what happened to Todd McQuaid. And the reason for his murder comes out of the blue.
While she did acknowledge the crime occurred at her house. It really wasn't a pre-planned murder, as Harry Johnson had indicated.
Tammy said that Todd was killed because that he had molested one of her daughters.
She says when Roger found out, he swore he was going to kill Todd.
She was fearful. She didn't go along, that something might happen to her.
Tammy says on the night of October 6th, Roger Klein and Harry Joe Johnson showed up at her house unannounced. They were drunk and looking to get Todd for molesting her daughter.
Roger, please, please stop it! Roger, please stop!
She was powerless to stop them.
She was being held down while Todd was being shot, and she wasn't involved in the planning or the execution of this horrible idea of killing Todd McQuaid.
And you tried to stop
Tammy was too afraid to stop him. To explain why, she shows a copy of an FBI Most Wanted poster. Roger carries it around in his wallet.
There was a documented case, and lo and behold, he has a wanted poster for the suspect that he carries around with him. I looked at the composite, and it certainly does resemble Roger Klein, and apparently he admitted that he had killed this person.
The location of the previous murder is not far from where Todd McQuaid's body was found. Both are close to the farm where Roger Klein grew up.
It certainly does happen in a state that he has ties to.
Is Roger Klein a serial killer? Was Todd McQuaid molesting Tammy Wilson's daughter? Tammy's story is compelling, but is it true?
Tell us.
Trooper Johnson was conducting his interview with Tammy Wilson, and I recall vividly when he came out of the room that he made the statement to me, that lady either had nothing to do with this, or that's one of the most cold-blooded individuals I've ever seen in my life.
Faced with two conflicting stories, police try to find some clue to prove who's lying.
That put us into a flurry of search warrants.
We processed the Ford Bronco, and we found some what appeared to be blood stains in the back of the Bronco.
We secured a search warrant for the T-Mac office and secured the weapons that was involved.
We recovered 3 firearms, a Ruger 357 Magnum, a 45 caliber Smith & Wesson automatic, and a 40 caliber Smith & Wesson automatic. Ballistics results conducted on the 40 caliber Smith & Wesson were the same as the fragment recovered from Mr. McQuaid's body at the time of autopsy.
We secured a search warrant for Tammy Wilson's house in Rossford, West Virginia.
Crime scene investigators meticulously comb through Tammy's house.
They found some blood traces at the house, but so much time had expired, they couldn't say it was Todd McQuaid's blood. They found marks on the floor where the bullets were fired. It showed that there were multiple shots and that Todd was incapacitated or passed out. Obviously, if somebody takes 3 shots at you and you're not unconscious, you're gonna try to escape, and that didn't happen.
According to Harry Joe Johnson, Todd didn't move because Tammy Wilson drugged him. But the autopsy finds no trace of drugs in Todd McQuaid's body. All 3 are charged with first-degree murder. On the eve of the trial, it's no longer clear if Tammy Wilson is an innocent victim or a cold-blooded killer. "8 months after Todd McQuaid's death, 3 of his employees go on trial for murder. The problem is, there are 2 different versions of what happened that night. Harry Joe Johnson says Tammy Wilson drugged Todd with Valium to set him up for the killing.
The problem we had was we could not establish forensically what had happened.
That's when a damning discovery comes to light.
They found that Tammy Wilson had gotten a prescription for Valium, and she had changed the prescription from 2 to 12.
With this find, the prosecutor requests a second autopsy to look specifically for Valium.
Todd's body had been decomposing, and there was not a whole lot of bodily fluids to test. They actually took a sample from the liver itself and were able to find a trace of Valium.
That trace of Valium gives prosecutors a solid case against Tammy Wilson and her 2 accomplices.
We had the fact that Harry Joe Johnson said that she was going to incapacitate Todd. We had the prescription that she had changed from 2 to 12 Valium. All those little pieces fit together and pointed toward her.
The scenario prosecutors present to the jury has Roger pulling the trigger, but Tammy pulling the strings.
Well, it was 3 o'clock in the morning, October 6th.
She was baiting the hook for McQuaid, as women do best, with some negligee and with a sexual attraction. She rendered him unconscious.
She called and said, "Okay, come, he's out."
They go to Tammy's house. Todd McQuaid is on the floor in the bedroom. He's out.
Roger knew he was going to do the shooting, and he went in and shot 3 times with a .45 caliber pistol and missed. Roger came back out and said, "I can't do it."
Tammy was screaming at him, "No, you got to go in and finish this."
So he goes back with the .40 caliber.
Come on, Roger.
And kills Todd McQuaid.
Roger Klein, along with Tammy Wilson and Harry Joe Johnson, did wrap the body in garbage bags, carpet, and tarpaulin, and load him in the vehicle.
Harry Johnson and Tammy Wilson remain behind to clean up the crime scene. Roger Klein departs for the state of Ohio.
He dumps Todd's body down a ravine, covered it up with some dirt, a shallow grave type thing. And left it there for the animals. Tammy goes to the office the next day like nothing's happened.
Hi.
2 days after Todd McQuaid is reported missing, Tammy Wilson visits his lawyer to finalize the deal creating their new corporation, T-Mac Century.
No, he just never came in to sign.
Mr. McQuaid was killed before the corporation was actually finalized. Mr. McQuaid never had signed the paperwork. So her plan fell apart pretty early on.
If the motive for murder was money, Todd McQuaid was killed for nothing. Harry Joe Johnson's case never goes to trial. He's sentenced to 9 years in jail. Roger Klein is sentenced to life with mercy, meaning eligible for parole.
He had no motive to do it on his own. She was the one who wanted to take over this business. There is a strange childlike quality of Roger Klein of which he wants approval, and he would have done that to protect, you know, this woman that for whatever reason he saw something in her, and I believe probably she was one of the few women that ever paid any attention to him and fed into his low self-esteem and made him feel good about himself, and that I think he was prepared to go to the penitentiary initially to do that. She is, you know, the femme fatale of the whole story.
Tammy's web of lies collapses. The jury finds her guilty of first-degree murder.
Tammy Wilson was able to find people that she could manipulate, and Roger and Harry just happened to be those people.
She had to do some serious talking in them boys' head to turn them on Todd the way she did.
As for Tammy's allegations that Todd molested her daughter, another made-up story.
She doesn't know how to tell the truth. She's a pathological liar.
Tammy lied to the police and Todd's family.
I called him one night to talk to him about how I still have very strong feelings for him, and, you know, maybe we should try again. And Tammy answered the phone. If you would just tell him that I called, and she said, I will, and for some reason we started talking. And I was on the phone with her for almost an hour.
What Todd's wife didn't know, Tammy committed the murder less than 48 hours earlier.
How she could talk so calmly when she knew that he was already dead was really shocking. We were given permission to go to the house where he was actually murdered in, and I gotta tell you, it was so creepy to go there. And I went into her house and saw my grandmother's paintings hanging on her wall, and my silverware in her, my good silverware in her drawers. She just took them after she had him killed. She just helped herself to everything that was in his apartment. I think the woman was crazy and just was out for herself and had no remorse and no sense of right and wrong. I want people to remember Todd, that he was a good person and that he loved life and he was always struggling to better himself. Everybody has skeletons in their closets, but I think all in all he was a good person, and I think that he truly loved me and his children. Is just life interfered.
I have known my whole life that my dad was shot and murdered. Not having him at my wedding and my prom and to teach me to drive, and it was those things that I missed out on.
More than 2 decades after killing Todd McQuaid, Tammy Wilson is up for parole.
Now it's every couple of years or whatever, we're gonna have to go through it again and again and again. It's not over, it's never over.
She met us, she knew us, and to know that you are leaving a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old without a dad, it's pure evil. It's basically my impression of her is pure evil.